You're listening to Real Facts on Real Estate with Sean Patrick Maloney.
That sounds good.
Welcome to episode 31, The Ford Method in Real Estate. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Maloney. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk to you about the Ford Method in Real Estate, and I'm not talking about the method that Ford invented of the assembly line production. Though a very, very good one in business, it's not what we're using today. What I'm talking about when I talk about Ford is building the original communications with clients through family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So that's where we get the word Ford. Again, it's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. I'm going to talk about how that relates to you and your clients and how to build a better relationship with all your clients, understanding human communication and what they want to talk about. Some of the things we're going to talk about is, first of all, that people like to talk about themselves first. The most important thing to anybody is themselves. People are also easily distracted. It's always important when working in business to keep on topic. Be aware of the tonality of your voice as well as your body language. Knowing how to use the ups and downs of your voice and knowing how to use your actual body language if present and in front of them is going to be really important in all this. I want to talk about how lies stand out very blatantly and openly when using this method if you're using it wrong. Common ground is the goal of this method. Compliments work during this method, but also risk total breakdown of communication. And last but not least of things that we're going to talk about is that this method can be used both during establishing a relationship as well as with established relationships. So let's talk about the first of the letters Ford, so family. Children are the number one topic of most everybody. If someone has a child, it's their favorite thing to talk about, it's their favorite thing to think about, as well as it's their favorite person in the entire world. Most people even take their children to be more important than themselves. So it's important to know that when you're working with a client, one of the best conversation topics is family. So some of the different things that people get into is asking if they have children, which is a very simple and basic question, asking if someone has children. But you want to get in a little deeper and get into trying to create a connection. If they have children, what are their ages? What are their genders? Do you have children that are the same age and gender, or did you grow up in a family where you had brothers and sisters that during the time when you were younger, you were around the same age gaps? That way you can have something to talk with them about a little further. How old is their oldest child? How many boys and girls do they have? What grades are your children in? All these questions can help you foster a relationship to get it off the ground, to let them know that you care. You're not only there for the sale, but you're also there for them. You could ask about their spouse or significant other, how and where they met. You could tell them how and where you met yours. But remember, when we're bouncing things back and forth on our side of the conversation, it should take up no more than 25% of the entire conversation, where theirs should take up 75%. So if you were to say, where and when did you meet your spouse, and they asked you the same question, you would just go back to say, we met in 2017, and we went to Paris, and we got engaged there. And then you want to go back to their conversation, because what you don't want to do is get into a long story about how you took her on an elaborate plane ride, and you asked her to marry, and then you realize that the way you did it was better than the way they did it as far as the way it came out in the conversation, which can then lead to you kind of downed what they are telling you was a very important event. So again, the conversation is really not about you. Sometimes you need to put in your side of it, but you really want to always bounce back to them. Another person I remember that's in the family, and yes, I use the word person when I'm about to say the word pets, is pets. People actually look at their pets like people at this point in life. So you really want to make sure that you're asking about their pets. And in real estate, a lot of times we're asking questions to do with the house or to do with the housing needs. This is a great place when you're, as a real estate professional, to ask them, when looking for a home, do you have any needs as far as your pets? This is a great way to get them to tie in their pets to the housing, and you can actually learn about what kind of pets they have. Always make sure you're writing notes for yourself when you do find out these things, so that in the future, instead of asking about do you have pets, you can ask about, how is Bruce the dog doing? Or anything else that people tell you. That way there it shows not only you asking questions, but you're actually listening to them as well. You can also find out about siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles. Some of the different ways of doing that would be ask if they have any family nearby, or if you're working on buying a new home or selling a home, you could ask them how their family feels about them planning to move and how certain family members are handling it. at which point they can tell you about different things like my mother doesn't like that we're moving far away from her, or my cousin likes that we're moving into her neighborhood, or other things like this. Great way to talk about family. Again, family is the one topic that it's not up to any construction. It already happened. We all have our family. We can't really change it. So it is one that people love to talk about. It gives them stability and it never changes. Occupation is the next category. So we have family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. With occupation, it's important to remember that most people think they don't like their job. They think, oh, no, I don't really like it, but they actually do. The reason they do is it actually gives them validation in life, and it allows them to be successful at something, and also allows them to be a knowledge source in a certain area or department, which people, honestly, we really like our social currency, our ability to show that we have knowledge of a certain subject. It's something that we really kind of get a kick out of because nobody knows more about the subject than what you do professionally. So just keep in mind that it's a great conversation starter. A lot of us actually ask the quick question of just what do you do for work, but remember to not just make it a short talk. Make it into something that you actually get a little more creative and ask them a few more things. Where do you spend the majority of time? What did you go to college for? How'd you hear about your job opening? Did you ever picture yourself working in that industry? How many years have you been there? These are all questions that you can continue to foster the relationship along, and then you can turn them into questions that pull them back into the subject and go back towards the how does your job affect where you would want to live. So we go out and then we come right back in. One thing we don't want to do is venture too far out from subject. So we always want to use questions that tie us back into the subject, which again, how does your job affect where you'd like to live? So that takes them from talking about their job back to talking about their job and their living. So right there, you might get some cues as far as they might tell you, okay, I can't live more than 30 minutes away from the city, or I need to live near a commuter rail, or I need to live near a bus station. But this, again, ties their occupation to where they're going to live. And one of the great things as you're working your way through forward with the family and occupation is first they were born, everything goes on. Second, they get a job. The next thing you're going to do is talk about what they do for fun, and then you're going to talk about their dreams, which all of it you're building up to the dream of home ownership. So while you're working this, it's great because without words you can say, can you believe your job landed you in your home, and tie that all together, which means that they've actually created a successful path in life for themselves to grow into the job of their future, which is being a homeowner as well as enjoying their occupation. Remember never to compare or assimilate unless you really know the subject. So this is one of those subjects where if someone works in a field, they know a lot about it. Last thing you want to do is be a liar and tell them that you know something about the subject, because then they could come back at you with an industry-specific question, whether it be industry vernacular or it just be something you may not know as an outsider. And when they do that to you, they're doing that just to prove that you don't know what you're saying that you do know. Or if you say you do know and then you start asking questions that a person who did know wouldn't ask, it creates you as a liar, and there's no reason for that. With family and occupation, you really don't have to match at all. You might do something completely different. We're all part of the universe. We're all working together towards a common goal known as the world, but we don't all do the same thing. So when you think, okay, the way that I'm going to find similar ground to them is I'm going to tell them that I do the same thing, or that I went to college for something that they went, or anything like that. Like I said, it's just a way to develop yourself as a liar. And when you're working in forward, I said that at the beginning, is it can be the quickest way to build rapport with someone, but it also can be the quickest way to break down rapport. So make sure that you're using it to learn about the people, learn about their family, learn about their occupation, but not always saying, I do that. I know someone that does that. You don't have to find that. It's something that people do, but just stick to the deal. Don't short talk. Don't let it wander away. And then just focus on the cause. Focus on how you're going to get them more towards building the relationship with you and ultimately purchasing the home or selling the home through you as the real estate professional. So let's talk about recreation. Recreation is one of the easiest places to find common ground with everybody. Lots of us enjoy the same things. There's a million different things out there that we can enjoy. Some of the indicators for you is you can look at the bumper stickers, the t-shirts, the possessions around their home, and other places for clues. When you're meeting with people, sometimes they'll pull up and you'll see right on their bumper sticker, you might see a zip code that indicates they may vacation somewhere. You might see something that says Salt Life that indicates they like beach life. But again, these are the things where they're going to be telling you a lot about themselves, and you can easily steer the conversation towards one of these subjects that you know is a common ground. This is a very easy place to find common ground in recreation. We have sports, we have hobbies, collections, movies, activities, and so much more. The nice part about sports and hobbies is they actually allow for a little bit of open, constructive arguments. So it's okay if you're a Yankees fan and you meet a Red Sox fan, because you might actually have something to talk about. You might talk about how much you don't like each other, which may sound funny, but it's not that you actually don't like each other. It's just that you like to actively engage in sports and you like to go back and forth, whereas if you might both have liked the Red Sox, you may have a little less to talk about than if you have that common competition with each other. So when you're working in this category of recreation, you want to ask engaging questions, but don't over-engage. And you want to use examples to feed them into this, and that you're telling them a little bit more about you. So say, for instance, I said that I like kayaking. This might be a good time to say, last week I went out kayaking and I was out in Falmouth in the river and it was a great time. So I don't go on to say and elaborate to a level of, I went out kayaking last week with my girlfriend, we met, we put the kayaks in our pickup truck, we drove out there, we went to a restaurant, we grabbed some sandwiches, we went out of the spit, we went up to this nice little beach, we sat there and watched the sunset, it was such a great night, then we kayaked back and we went out to dinner and then we got a movie. No, let them do that. All you needed to say was, oh yeah, you guys like kayaking too? Yeah, last week we went out to Falmouth. Have you done any trips lately? Tell me about them. There we go. Now we've given them the microphone. We've given them a subject. We've given them common ground. We've given them an ability to talk, but we haven't set the bar. We haven't set a standard. We haven't said, oh, I went on this huge trip and did all these great things and your trip better be better than mine. If you know anything about the way people like to talk, they don't like one-upsmanship. So when people one-up you, you don't like it. So why are you going to tell a story of your recreation if it isn't as good as the person who introduced the subject? So that's why we give them that open floor, that open playing field, so that they can say what they did and then we can actively listen. So when you are in this, you want to actively listen. You don't want to just let them sit there and talk and talk and talk. You might say, okay, or yeah, that makes sense, or oh, that's a great spot, or oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. Different things to indicate that you're actively listening and also taking and remembering the things being said so that you can show that you actually listened during the process. And then never assume you understand unless you actually understand. This is pretty simple. People love to talk about their recreation. They love to talk about what they're doing. Don't pretend like you know about a subject you don't know about. Allow the person to educate you. This is going to allow them to feel like they taught you something, as well as it's going to allow you not to look like a liar by saying that you know something that you don't know anything about, and then later on through conversation actually indicating you don't know based on the questions and comments that you're making. So never lie to people, because it's not worth it in this category especially. All four of these categories, when talking with people, are dangerous ones because they tend to know what they're talking about, but recreation is one where a lot of people, they study it incessantly. They know it inside out. So if you say stuff that's wrong, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And somebody who loves football is not going to say, like, how many periods was there in last night's game. But somebody who's lying and just wants to assimilate with people might. They might say, oh, you see that in the fourth inning of the football game the other day? What inning of what football game? What are you talking about? And I'm just obviously going above and beyond to show the examples of this, but this can happen on any level where you say the wrong sports person's name that's in a different sport or whatever. Once you've done that, you've uncovered the truth about yourself and you're using this to get at people. One of the things that's important is to remember that this does help build relationships, but ultimately you should be using it for that and not to manipulate situations. Be careful not to let this eat up too much time either. The recreation department, talking about recreation, can be risky. You can get way out from subject and then end up finding places where you don't have similarities and actually blow up your own deal by talking about kayaking. So remember, again, always try to create a way of a path back to the actual deal you're talking about. So maybe you're talking about kayaking and then maybe the house is located close to a pond. That's when you can roll it right back and say, well, it's going to be great that you love kayaking and that you'll be living in Plymouth, because in Plymouth there's a lot of recreational lakes and they also have the ocean where you can kayak as well. So living in Plymouth is going to be really convenient to getting to be able to do that recreation that you enjoy. Again, tying the home to the recreation and creating the dream, which we're going to talk about dreams next. So as you know, in real estate, we're actually always creating the dream. We're always creating the future of where they're heading in life. So the dreams category is one of the easier ones in real estate for us to actually get into the actual conversation. You're going to actually help engineer their dreams and ask engaging questions to bring it to the front of mind. So this is a really great one in real estate because we're ultimately trying to pair them with the right house. We're not building houses. We're not building clients. We're not doing any of that. We're actually very similar to a dating agency we're engaging them to find out what they like and to find the right one for them. So this is a great place where we can kind of figure out a little bit more, and we can also create that dream to the point where they feel like they are at the right home and this is the one for them. As we all know in real estate, the best thing going is when you're in a house and you hear your clients talking about where they'd put the couch or where they'd put the chairs or whose bedroom it is, because at that point no longer is it the other person's house, it's their dream home, it's the home that they're creating in their minds for the future of them to move in, and it's just really, really a great indicator of a future offer. So some of the things we could ask to help induce this would be, what would you do with this kitchen if you lived here? Where would you put the couch and chairs in this room? Do you like to barbecue, you could ask when you're out on the porch next to the barbecue. What colors would you like to paint this room? Which bedroom would be with children's? So these are all questions we can ask to engineer the future thoughts, but one thing we got to remember is we do not want to ask questions that were not prefaced by the client. So what I mean by this is if a person tells you, I can't wait to buy a home with an older kitchen so I can redo it, then maybe it's good to ask, what would you do with this kitchen if you lived here? But the sole fact that you think the kitchen is old is not a point where you ask, what would you do with this kitchen if you lived here? Because if you say that about a kitchen and the person thought the kitchen was perfectly fine and they weren't going to do any upgrades to it, but then you said that about the kitchen, then they look around and they go, geez, he's right. I really need to do something about this kitchen. They may not buy that house, so you might have actually deconstructed their dreams. So you got to remember, you got to listen to what they're saying. One of the more famous things that I heard that talked about a guy comes in at the car dealership, asks to see a car. Dealer brings it out. First thing he does is talk about the AC, talks about the all-wheel drive, power windows, got all the options, and the person says, you know what, it's actually not the one for me. And he says, can I ask you why? And he says, well, I don't need all-wheel drive. I'm sending it down to Florida. Okay. So they leave. Next one comes on, same thing, does the same thing again. It's got the AC, got the power windows, got the all-wheel drive. Person says, that's great, but I don't want to waste my money on AC. I was going to be sending that up to Alaska. Twice the same salesman failed to sell the car that had exactly what both clients needed because he was selling features and upgrades that they did not care about. So we want to think about, what do they care about? So when we're meeting with them and they're talking to us and they're saying, I really enjoy barbecuing, that's when you go on that back patio and you say, where would you set up your grill? How would you set up the outdoor seating area? You want to build the dreams they've already told us they're going to be building so that you can help them take it from a mindset and into a reality by standing there and daydreaming about it. And then eventually you'll be the one helping them write the offer to get the offer accepted and to get them into that home. But again, just keep in mind that everyone has different dreams and different expectations, and that just because you're used to living far away from something like a train track does not mean they are. And the same thing goes, you might be used to a brand new kitchen with tile and granite and all these other things, and they may have lived in a trailer before and never had an actual kitchen with all these appliances and fixtures. So don't think that asking certain questions that are granted to you are granted to them, because if you ask those questions, like I said, you ask what you're going to do with the kitchen, you might actually make them realize that it isn't the best. And then obviously another one would be, if you're in a little teeny tiny living room asking them where they're going to put the couch, may bring them into a catch-22 of, geez, he's right, we really can't put the couch there. Not that you can't coach them. If they told you that having a big sectional couch is a must for the house, you might want to bring it up when they can't get it. But you also don't want to blow apart deals on yourself, because at the end of the day, no matter who it is, no matter where they're going, the budget is always something that creates limiting factors. And if we want to be close to the highway and we want to have a big yard, we may have to sacrifice on room size. Or if we want to sacrifice on yard size, we may be able to go up on room size, and vice versa. So no matter what we're doing, we're always having to change and manipulate based on the actual goals. So let's go over some of the fundamentals of this. Again, with Ford, which is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, can be the quickest way to build rapport, but it also can be the fastest way to ruin it, being caught a liar. Always listen first and ask questions to fill in the time. So you're going to continue to build and elaborate, but you're going to listen first. Do not waste too much time here or lose too far away from the deal. So remember, whenever you're selling a home or whenever you're selling any product, you never want to stray too far from the product, and you always want to figure out a way to take that outside conversation and suck it back in, such as when you say, does it affect where you're going to live based on where you work? Is your commute a big deal? And then never assume anything. As they always say, if you assume things, you can make an ass out of you or me. But remember that assumptions are a dangerous place to be. Assuming anything is taking what you know and allowing that to control your thoughts that, okay, that's what everyone does, and everyone does things differently. Keep in mind your current relationship with the client and don't cross boundaries. So some people are going to be super friendly and they're going to tell you everything about their family, and other people are going to look at you and say, I just met you 2 minutes ago. Why would I ever tell you about my mother? That's not going to happen. So knowing the people and knowing what they want and knowing how they're going to talk with you is very important to keeping your current relationship and to building it. And then the more personal the subject, the tighter the bond. Again, I just talked about knowing the relationship with the client, but also realizing that if you can slowly but surely break down that edge they put up and you can get to the more personal level, you're going to tighten up your bond. And then know who you're talking with. Know what they're talking about, know what they want. Watch body language, tonality, and listen to what's being said. Important skill in all of sales is to listen. Listen to what's being said and know what the goals are. That way you can meet the goals and you can beat the expectations. Last but not least, always remember to put your learned information in your CRM system. The CRM system is one of the least utilized tools in all of sales. You want to put in everything from the dog's name to the kids' names, how old they are, what schools they go to. That way there, in the future, when you're talking and you call them up, you can say, hey, last time we spoke, you said Johnny was headed up to UMass Boston. How's that going for him? Is he like living on campus, or is he missing home at all? Do you guys miss him at home at all? And that way there you can show, not only did I ask this question before, I actually cared. I actually remember it, and it's something important to me because I know it's important to you. And what's important to you is important to me. In a world where so many people are moving towards technology-based products and they're moving further and further away from client communications, I can promise you by working with great client communications, you will dominate the marketplace and you will leave all these other people who are sending out automatic emails and not paying attention to their clients in the dust. I hope this really helps you build your business. If you want to learn more about the subject or any other subject, feel free to reach out to me, PM me, DM me, give me a phone call or anything else. Make sure you join our Facebook group, Real Facts on Real Estate, that matches this podcast, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you so much, and make sure to follow the podcast.